Man is a biological.
Well, we don't have to talk on that. I'm a religious speaker.
I know you're a religious speaker. I've seen your things.
Yeah, huh?
I told you I've seen your things.
Are you a Christian or
I'm a
Muslim?
Muslim.
Yeah, so do you want to have a discussion on that instead?
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
Yep.
Of course. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do that. So, let's just go with what we refer to as the criteria dilemma. Whatever you believe, what makes true your position, is just found in other positions, therefore making that position which contradicts the position that you're trying to prove is true, is also true. So why do you believe Islam is true?
Why do I believe Islam is true?
Yep.
A number of reasons. Mostly it's just my own faith, to be honest.
Yeah, but you've got to have a genuine conviction, even if it's like,
foundation.
yeah, like you've got to have a reason for why you're committing yourself to pray daily to this conception of God.
I don't know, I think the Quran speaks a lot of truths.
On what?
For example, you can find some scientific things in the Quran.
Ooh, you want to go there?
Huh?
You want to go there?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the time, any scientific miracle posited by the reading of the Quran, firstly, isn't a historical reading of the text. So nowhere within the first few generations of Islam are they claiming that the scientific claims within the Quran are an evidence for itself. Even though equally they were trying to claim that the linguistic miracles, continuity, and the revelation given to Muhammad in itself is evidence towards the Quran being true. So there's an expectation that the early Islamic scholars would exegete scientific passages in such a way to use this as evidence towards their position. So I think historically scientific miracles within the Quran are just inconsistent.
Inconsistent how?
Just that it's not a historical reading of the Quran. My second point is there's other scientific claims within the Quran which just aren't true.
Like?
Quran chapter 55 verse 19 to 20. For Allah has partitioned two bodies of water, one fresh and one salt, and out of both grow coral and pearls. You need a high salt concentration in order to grow pearls, but your Quran claims that fresh water grows out of coral. So I think
So
scientifically it's inconsistent.
This is the mixture of oil and salt water, right?
Yeah.
But you see that happen, it doesn't actually mix, it's like a line.
Well, that's not my claim. If you read onwards, it says that out of both grow coral. Yeah, coral doesn't grow out of anything with a low salt concentration. It doesn't grow in fresh water.
It doesn't grow in fresh water.
Correct.
Does it say fresh water?
Yes.
It does.
Yep.
I'm so sure it said sea water, no? Salt water.
Salt and fresh water. And the whole point is that you guys try to claim that this is a miracle within the Quran because these things don't actually merge, even though it isn't true. Scientifically, salt water actually goes underneath fresh water, so in some way, yes, they do merge. But besides from that, because really, semantically, you can argue both positions, it later goes on to say that coral grows out of fresh water, even though marine biology would say that we need a high salt concentration.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yep.
Why do you believe in Christianity? What's your foundation?
Yeah, my foundation is that there are two things within divine revelation that need to be true in order for us to say by necessity that this is from the Almighty God. So firstly, we have this concept of continuity that we can evidence outside of the message of a messenger that we're trying to demonstrate has a continuity within this prophetic chain that we confess. So very clearly biblically we see that Abraham and Moses see God in a way that is not the Father but rather another person within the Godhead. So for example, we have the famous story of Abraham and Sodom and Gomorrah, where Abraham is approached by three angels. Two of them deny to be God, but the other claims to be Yahweh. And in Genesis 19:24, we see that Yahweh on earth is calling upon Yahweh on heaven. Now the reason why I quote this passage a lot within my apologetics is that if we read John 1:18, it says that none has seen the Father but the Son. And it's the understanding that the Son is the intermediator of the Father. So whenever we see God, clearly within the Old Testament, it is meant to be the Son. And the Old Testament very clearly displays multiple persons within the Godhead, which is consistent with the claim of Christ. So we have the first thing, which is continuity. The second thing would just be any revelation prophecy which we can evidence within this text that has more explanatory power towards it being to God. So for example, we have the corpus of Isaiah's writings that indicates to us that firstly the Messiah given unto us will send a covenant to the Gentiles. That's Isaiah 42 verse 9. That this Messiah that will be persecuted by its government from birth will be called Almighty God. That's Isaiah 9:6. And that he will be a substitutionary atonement for mankind. That's throughout the passage of Isaiah 53, where it talks about the suffering servant being pierced for our own transgressions. Even, for example, in Zechariah, we learn about the selling out of Judas for 30 pieces of silver. That you sell your Lord out for 30 pieces of silver and you throw it on potter's land. What does it say in Acts and in Matthew's Gospel? That Judas sells Christ out for 30 pieces of silver. So very clearly, I think we can see the two things present within my criteria of evidence. That first being revelation that can be proven to be from God, or rather increases the possibility that it is, and also a consistency in what God is throughout the book and outside of the book itself, because the Old and New Testament is 76 books, and all of these books are consistent in the God that they preach. I don't think the same thing, however, can be said of the Quran.
So how can it not be said of the Quran?
Outside of the Quran, there's no real way in indicating that Muhammad is a true prophet of God in terms of continuity. We see now, for example, if you believe that the Torah and Injil are corruptions, and we try to question Muhammad and whether he's a prophet, and the two things that I believe that need to be true, continuity and revelation, and we can't appeal in the Quran because the messenger is in question, therefore we can't question his message, then how then can we demonstrate that Muhammad is a true prophet?
Raises a good point. That's raising a good point. I'm not qualified to but you do raise a good point.
No, it's a very simple polemical, sorry about that. It's a very simple polemical argument against Islam.
Could you repeat it?
Yep. So, very simply, if we can question the messenger, we therefore question the message. For example, if a king sends forth for a message, and we try to question if this is actually the messenger of the king, how can we take the message of the king that the messenger that is in question is giving? Yeah. Now, I said that continuity, the concept that you claim a line of prophets, a succession of prophets, their scripture, according to you guys, are corrupted. Okay, good. We need to demonstrate continuity. We can't appeal to the Quran because that would be already assuming that Muhammad's a true prophet. It's impossible to demonstrate that Muhammad would be confessing the same God because essentially we have to take Muhammad's word on it.
Because we don't have the other scriptures.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to establish.
Yeah, it's impossible to establish why we would ever believe that Muhammad's a true prophet.
Constitute the only criteria.
Yeah, I said that something within the book that would prove it to be from God and continuity. Both, in my personal opinion, have to be present.
What's the other one?
Things within the revelation that would prove that it is from God. Scientific miracles, linguistic miracles, revelation. I just think that, although you guys claim it, I don't think it's present within the Quran, unfortunately.
Claim what?
Like, I don't think there's any miracles within the Quran.
Have you looked at the linguistic claim?
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird. Because I don't know what you qualify as a linguistic miracle.
I see. Okay.
And also, very interestingly, you see Arabs within the first 2 centuries of Islam preserving pagan literature to try to influence people's position on it being abnormally linguistic, like the Quran, how it's abnormal from the typical writing style. Now, if the Muslims at the time of the Prophet were trying to preserve texts to prove that the Quran was linguistically a miracle, why didn't they try to preserve the Injil or Torah? Because it makes a very claim that in both books you see the prophecy of Muhammad, right? So why would they not preserve these books?
To prove that claim?
Yeah, to prove that claim.
The Injil?
Yeah, the Injil and the Torah.
Okay, you take the Injil to mean the Bible, right?
I take a very nuanced position. I think that the book doesn't exist, and in order for you guys to hold the position that the Quran is true, extensionally it will be referring to the idea of the Bible. The only thing that the Christians would be following is the Bible. We see no motivation in believing that the Torah exists. Therefore, the only thing that can be referred to whenever it talks about it is the Bible. Now, do I think Muhammad and the people transmitting the texts believe that this is the Bible? I don't think so, because we have to be charitable in believing that they're not going to affirm scripture that contradicts their own book.
I see. So you don't take the Injil to mean the Bible.
I don't think intentionally it is. I think extensionally it is. What did he say?
I do not have
About
superhuman.
closing up the shop.
I think a lot of people get annoyed. Mike's, he's not going to. Anyways, yeah.
Okay, cool. So you don't take the Injil to mean the Bible, but do you agree for us that it is the Bible?
I think if you assume the Quran is true, you would have to hold that a book that we don't have access to exists and it's not the Bible. It's the only way you can be a Muslim. If you believe it's the Bible, you're finished. Because, firstly, how can you affirm the Injil, which is a strictly one book given to Isa by Allah? How can this book be corrupted in such a way to turn out to be the Bible? It's like, you ever play Pokemon? Yeah. How do we get to that evolutionary stage?
You have to hit a certain.
Yeah, like, how do we get to one book, teaches Allah, teaches Isa? How can this be corrupted in such a way for it to miraculously become the 23 books of the New Testament that never claim that internally Christ is the one writing and receiving this revelation?
I think they may be interested in discussing.
No, people like watching the tourists.
Very much. So
I've actually got a question.
Yep.
Just like,
By the way, no question is too controversial or insulting for you to ask. You can ask me anything.
no, it's just about the doctrine of the Trinity.
Yeah, go on.
Absolute divine simplicity.
Yeah, that everything within God is going to be identical to God Himself.
So how can you explain that? Like,
Yeah. So everything that,
to the Trinity, I mean.
in relation to the Trinity, okay, essence of God, His attributes, all His attributes are identical to the essence of God. The persons are identical to the essence, but formally distinct by the definition.
Oh, so they're distinct in concept, identical in reality.
I mean, certainly that's the way that some Catholics and Orthodox people like to describe it. In terms of my understanding, I'm still not too fully, invested in a position. But yes, you can say that.
As in, like, the persons are identical in essence. I mean, in.
Yeah, they're identical materially, but formally distinct.
What do you mean by formally?
Yeah, like, so water is H2O, and, what's the word?
Okay, I see.
Ice and water are formally distinct, like, by their formalities distinct, but materially identical to H2O. Ice cube is not water, because they're formally different in terms of their structure, but materially identical to H2O. See my point here?
Because they are made up of the same thing.
Yeah, they're made of the same thing, but they're formally distinct.
Okay.
They're distinct in their formalities, by their definitions, but they're materially identical in what we're talking about, which is either the essence or H2O. That's why I think if you want to posit some sort of real distinction in their concept of this whole water analogy of the Trinity, that's absolutely fine. If you modify that analogy, it doesn't fall into modalism.
I have a question.
Yeah, go on.
Is Jesus infallible in Christian?
Yeah.
He is infallible.
Well, considering he's the living God, man, I would hope so.
So he's the living God.
Yes.
Does that mean he has the same descriptions as
Yep, he shares in the same functions, attributes.
attributes? Does
Yes.
that mean he's all-knowing?
Yes.
But doesn't it say that Jesus spoke to God?
Yeah, he spoke to God the
Now,
Father.
two all-knowing beings, what are they actually talking
It's not beings, it's persons.
Okay, so if Jesus is the all-knowing person,
Yep,
and God is the all-knowing God,
yep.
what are they actually talking about?
Well, they're eternally loving each other, for example.
They're eternally loving each other. Now, if they're both all-knowing, why do they have to specify that they love each other? If I was
I
all-knowing,
mean,
and you're
you don't need to specify anything within God, but God, out of His mercy, has revealed it in Revelation.
I'm not speaking about the revelation. I'm speaking
Yeah.
about Jesus and God.
Yeah,
Like,
they have an eternal relationship because they're eternally Father and Son.
they're eternally Father and Son. But
Yep.
if they are both all-knowing,
Yep.
what are they actually promising?
I mean, you could just appeal to the speech command theory in that God is simply saying that He's speaking to the Son, but in the way that He's speaking to the Son, we just don't know what that actually means.
So
But
you don't know what it means when
it's just a language device, my friend.
but what, like there has to be something for this language.
Well, not really. I mean, unless you want to be like an Ash'ari and affirm like the literal definition of everything within the Quran, you can hold to a certain mysticism.
Take it as a metaphor,
I just take it as a language device. God is just revealing.
which is a metaphor.
No, a language device can represent something and it not be metaphorical.
So you don't know that meaning.
Yeah, we just don't know what typically God would be talking
But I'm
to.
confused. Like,
It's like asking me like, what is God's mind currently thinking about? No, not
that's
really.
not really what I'm asking you. I'm asking
Yeah.
how can two all-knowing beings talk to each other? And you're now saying
Because they're eternally, relationally opposed in that they eternally love each other. Now, when they're speaking, I think it's just in the terms of economic possession, in that the Father is commanding the Son in being sent down as his intermediator.
But why does he have to command him if he's all-knowing?
It's just the economic possession of the Trinity. They both share in the same will, so they're both wanting, or rather they share in the same action of sending the Son, but it's just substantiated by different persons.
Explain
When you
that
say
a
it's
bit.
substantial, I
Yeah, so they share in the same action. So, okay, the Father sending the Son. Okay, all three persons share in that same action, but this action has to be substantiated in some sort of way. You see what I mean?
you mean like
Like, actually, it has to be done some way. There has to be a means to an end, right? So it is done. The means to the end is the Father sending the Son, but they share in the same action. They share in the same mind, and they're perfectly united as one, as both the Son and Holy Spirit lay perfectly with the Father, because the Father is the fountain, the source of the two persons.
yeah, I think I know what you said.
I didn't.
It's just a,
One more time.
okay. They share in the same action. Okay, an action needs a mean to an end. How is it done, right? Okay, it's done. The Father sending the Son. This action is shared perfectly within the three persons because they're united as one.
Okay. Okay, fine. So they all share the same actions.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. But this still brings me back to my point, which I haven't actually gone to answer.
Yeah. Because I don't know what God is going to be speaking to. I just don't know.
So you don't have the answer.
No, I
Because
don't.
no one could.
Yeah, no one could know.
So could two all-knowing beings talk to each other?
Well, it's not beings, persons, sure.
Okay, so one all-knowing person
Yeah.
and one all-knowing God. Oh wait, no. What-
Two all-knowing
So the Father and the
persons.
Son. I'll just
Yeah,
say
the Father and the Son, yes.
Could they speak to each other?
Yes.
But if they're both all-knowing, I
Yeah.
don't see how this like contradicts.
No.
Because if I was all-knowing and you were all-knowing,
It's like saying, for example, like, why does God create creation if he already knows what is entailed when he does something? Like, why does God create us if he already knows descriptively what we're going to do? Like, it's just an inconsistent question, and I think it doesn't really lead anywhere, because if I say, oh well, Adam, only Allah knows, like, it's going to be totally consistent.
What's the difference between a person and a being?
A being is an existence, a person is a rational subsistence in the nature. So,
What?
a rational subsistence in a nature. So they subsist in the same existence, and they're all three persons are rational, so they qualify as three distinct persons, but they share in the same existence, and in this way they are one.
now correct me if I'm wrong. I have another question.
Yeah, go on.
So can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
How do you make the distinction in persons if there's a distinction in the persons, right?
Yeah, there's a real distinction in the persons within the Trinity.
Are the persons in reality identical or
No, they're really distinct.
how does this
Wait, I've got a question. How do you know, like, philosophical jargon if you don't know, like, you don't seem like too learned in both Islam and Christianity, not in a debate setting. How the fuck do you know, like, concepts like divine simplicity and stuff like this? You like, watch Muhammad Hijab or some nonsense like that, right?
I don't really know.
Nah, this guy watches, like, some Muslim apologist, I can tell. Where'd you get your info from? Go on.
He just reads.
What do you read?
Tell me about your logic books.
Alright, go on, yeah, so I believe these persons are really distinct, yeah.
I'm just trying to understand. I'm not trying to like.
Yeah, yeah, I know. You're not gonna force me, but yeah. It's difficult to do like the TikTok style debate of like you force someone into a corner. I was just curious. Yeah, these persons are really distinct. In reality, these persons are distinct.
I'm trying to think like how does this like how do you remain an absolute divine simplicity? Like
Because I'm absolute divine simplicity. Because I'm not a Catholic. I'm a divine simplicitist.
what's the difference?
Well, in the fact that they believe that the distinctions in the persons are conceptual.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought you'd believe.
No, I just believe they are formally distinct definitionally, but these definitions are relationally opposed and really distinct in reality. Like, so they're just classifying this distinction differently, but they're still picking out the way that they're different in the same way. Okay, so Catholic and Orthodox are both going to agree that the three persons relationally oppose each other.
Okay.
Who said that? Why am I a scumbag? I don't know.
Okay, cool. I had a
Let him finish this.
Yeah, so they pick out the same distinction, but they just classify this distinction differently. So they want to say conceptually this makes the persons distinct, or in reality they are really distinct. I believe the three persons are relationally opposed, really distinct in reality, but are identical materially to the divine essence. Alright.
Okay, so I had a question.
Yeah, go on.
Obviously, I'm actually not too, like you said, I'm not too learned in
No one's learned in religion.
Christianity and stuff.
No one's learned in religion, my friend.
Now, I had a question.
Yeah.
In the Bible, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yep.
does it affirm that Jesus prayed to God?
Yeah, he prostrated towards the Father. But I will warn you this.
So I'm just
Oh, one
asking,
sec.
Get a call. Yeah, I don't care about this guy. Cool, we've been going for a while. Yeah.
So it does say that the Son prays to the Father, but if you want to be consistent holistically, prayer doesn't necessitate this strict sense of worship. We see in, for example, Daniel 7:36, that the king prays to the prophet Daniel. Now, you may say, "MashaAllah, this is shirk," but we come from a different cultural context, right? We come to this understanding that prayer is more of a sign of respect in some cases. In other cases, yes, it is worship. In different cases, it's communication, or just a sign of reverence, like respecting someone. In a way that some cultures kiss the hands of others, we believe as Christians you can pray towards someone and it just be a sign of respect. So for example, was 1 Chronicles 29 verse 20, where it says that King David was prayed to. Daniel 7:36, the prophet Daniel was prayed to. Both prophets within the Old Testament that receive prayer by other people, and God doesn't condemn them. So there's a cultural context within the Bible when you talk about prayer, and prayer doesn't always necessitate worship. It can be a sign of respect, or alternatively, it can be a sign of worship just by utilizing this medium of communication.
So would you take it to mean when it says Jesus prayed or prostrated?
I take it that either, one, God the Father, according to Jeremiah 24, is the God of all human flesh. So when Christ assumes flesh, yes, he'd be worshipping the Father. Secondly, I think that this could just be a sign of respect. And thirdly, we can say that the three persons all worship each other and accept each other as God. Either three positions are totally fine.
They all God and they all accept each other.
As God, yeah.
So in that sense, they're...
Yeah, in this sense, you can say they're worshipping each other, yeah.
And is one God any greater than the other? Or are they all
No, they're the same God, my friend.
So they're all on equal footing?
Yeah.
That did answer some questions.
Yeah, well, listen, like, I'm guessing most of the young Muslim bros on the street aren't going to come to Christianity, but God willing. I guess you think the same of myself becoming a Muslim, but I do pray for it. Every time I enter church service, I light a candle for all the poor lost souls that I believe, and I pray there for their conversion, as probably you do the same for the people that you interact and friends of Christians. But yeah, it's good to believe why other people believe in what they say they do. A dishonest critique of someone's position is dishonesty, and dishonesty isn't a venerated property within any religion, typically. So learn why people believe in what they believe, and if that's the only limiting factor on why you're not a Christian and why you remain in another religion, contemplate that for a while. Yeah.
I'm trying to think about this, because I'm trying to think if you say, so you have like the essence, right?
Yeah.
This essence is, I don't know if it's the right word, but it's made up of three persons, not made up of.
Well, no, like, I don't think the essence is made out of three persons. Like, I just think that if you're talking about like a set rod, it's going to be the essence and three persons. So the three persons subsisting in the essence.
Subsisting in the essence, are they not identical?
Yeah, they're not identical. The persons aren't identical. They're identical to the essence, yeah.
Oh, they are identical to the essence, but not identical to each other.
Yeah.
And there's a real distinction between them.
Yeah.
So how does this like,
Not lead into tritheism?
yeah, or like because me made up of
Yeah.
something?
Well, parthood is just that something is less than the whole. I think typically within like pseudo philosophy, we think as soon as we say real distinction, this necessitates like composition. Like for example, there are ways that Muslims get out of composition, and the only reason I use that argument against Muslims is because I think the Muslims that I use it towards don't know their own religion, even though they act like they do. So I've used this argument against Muhammad Hijab, the argument of composition. Couldn't resolve it. Tried to use it against Ali Dawah. He tried to run away from it. So yeah, I think the argument of composition mostly is refuted within the Muslim tradition, and they still hold to a real distinction within God's attributes. So I don't know how that wouldn't lead into composition if you still hold to that. A real distinction always necessitates composition. But
Real distinction between what?
like between the attributes of Allah, like for example, I'm conceding that it doesn't, but there's still a real distinction nonetheless. So if you're going to be consistent with your tradition, I think then a real distinction wouldn't necessitate.
I found absolute divine spiritualism.
Oh right, like what sect of Sunni Islam are you?
I'm not Sunni Muslim.
You know what? You know Muslim?
I'm Shia Muslim.
Oh, you're Shia. You Shia as well. Oh damn, bro, I didn't know that.
So
Crazy.
I found absolute divine spiritualism.
Oh right, okay.
I was asking.
Interesting. Yeah, real distinctions don't necessitate composition. I think that parthood is just qualified by being less than the whole itself.
And you don't think that, for example, one of the persons, we see that what you just said one time, part this is
Yeah. Parthood, what I qualify as a part, is just something that's less than the whole.
Okay. And you don't think if you call something singular to part, that would be less than the whole?
No.
Because he's
Well, like I think when we talk about the whole of the essence, the Father would be inseparable from this whole, and that metaphysically it's essential that the three persons exist in all possible worlds.
Okay, so you're saying that it's necessary that it's necessary that God exists as three persons.
Yeah.
Why is that necessary?
It's just metaphysically necessary. It's just something that,
But like why?
well, like, I don't know. God is God, my friend.
No, but like, if you say it's necessary, for example,
Well, like, when you talk about necessity, there's two modalities, right? You have logical and metaphysical, right? So metaphysical is just like a being that will exist and cash out in all existences. And logical is just, like, in truth out of it leading to a contradiction, this thing must exist.
to prevent a contradiction.
Yeah. So metaphysically, the three persons will always exist in every possible world.
So, if you say it's just wondering, if you're saying it's metaphysically necessary that it exists as three persons,
Yeah.
does that mean outside text, like rationally, you can?
No, I don't believe that you can come to the conclusion of a triad within nature. I think generically you just come to the conclusion of like one being.
Yeah. So then, how would it be metaphysically necessary?
Well, I don't think there needs to be a motivation as long as I can prove that firstly, wherever I'm getting my information of like what something is necessary, like revelation, right? Revelation would say, okay, we can firstly come to the conclusion that God is going to be necessary in all possible words, right?
Sorry?
God is going to be necessary in all possible words.
Yeah.
Alright. Revelation that I can prove outside of this critique demonstrates that God is a triad. God, everything of God is necessary. Him being a triad would also be necessary.
Because the revelations that affirm is a triad.
Yeah.
I see. And the revelation that would make it metaphysically necessary for him to be a triad.
Well, no, it just tells us that it is, regardless of us knowing.
It is necessary.
It not in index to the fact that the revelation has told us so, just rather it's a signal to us that it is.
So revelation doesn't directly tell you?
No, revelation tells me, but it's not the reason why it is.
Oh, so what's
You were trying to structure it. There's no real reason. A metaphysical necessity isn't trying to avoid, and there isn't a motivation in why something is. It just is because it is. You know? You don't seem particularly flattered at the discussion. Do you want to have a discussion?
So if they want to talk, they can.
Yeah, they can go for it.
No, it's fine, it's fine. Pardon? Not remotely. Well, you can come here in person then. She doesn't seem too flattered. But anyways, what are your guys' names?
My name's Yasser. That was a lovely conversation.
Yasser and Ibrahim. My name is Young Bob, but my baptismal name is Gregory, so just call me that. Because I thought it was more appropriate because you guys, he's named after a prophet, so try to up myself in a pious name, you know what I mean? Is he with you? Alright, you're just like admiring this discussion, yeah?
Well, thank you so much. I was,
Yeah, God bless you, bro, God bless you.
that was interesting.
No,
Thank you
it's
for
ve-
answering my questions.
Yeah, of course. And if you want to find me, if you search up on TikTok, Young Bob, send me a DM, say you had a discussion with me. If you have any other questions, just send me a message on. Yeah, listen.
Understand the.
Also, my recommendation to you is don't, people like take testosterone at the gym to like unnaturally build themselves. Don't do that with studying philosophy. Don't go on the internet and outsource your knowledge from people online.
Yeah, I don't know why he thinks I watch like Muhammad the
No. Just don't do that. Naturally grow yourself. And I know I'm a hypocrite because most of the time I've done that. But don't be the guy at the gym that's just like shredded and destroyed. Do it naturally. Yeah.
That's what I said at the beginning. I'm not qualified. I don't really discuss religion, like unless I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Discussions on religion can reduce back down to the workplace, right?
Yeah, exactly. But good talking to you.
Yeah. God bless you. Do you want to have a discussion, sir? You sure? Well, what was like
I'm just listening to what you guys.
Yes, he noticed me from YouTube, and traditionally I discuss on religion, so he wanted to have a discussion on religion. But the discussion now is just on why transgenderism is toxic towards children.